All right, Chritian. This is exciting. This is the first time we've spoken to a general manager.
Mm-hmm.
You know, other than that time that the general manager of the pizza shop kicked me out.
Right.
I did speak to him.
Pretty
Apologize.
standard.
This is a little different. This is an absolute honor. This is the first time we're speaking to an MLS GM all the way from Nashville. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for the one, the only, the general manager of your Nashville SC. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Jacobs, everybody.
Mike, what's up, man?
What's going on?
All right. The excitement starts.
Thank you so much for joining us. Like Alexis mentioned, we are. This is the first time we're speaking to an MLS GM, so we're gonna ask probably some advanced questions, some basic questions like what do you do, right?
You brought advanced questions, dude? I'm not prepared for that at all.
Alexis didn't study for this exam, but we're excited for you to be here because one, I know you're from New York. And so this is your opportunity, obviously, to reconnect with family and come out here and hang out a little bit. You're also probably in a good mood. Nashville just won their US Open Cup match in a thrilling comeback. So I guess the general question, what are the vibes like? What do you do when you get back to New York?
It's awesome to kind of come back and see family. Definitely try to get back as often as possible. And a lot depends on what's going on back in Nashville with work. If I can kind of escape for a weekend at a time and, worked out an hour schedule. It's a pretty congested fixtures list. But, with the Open Cup just the other day, opening the Geodis Park, our new stadium, gave me a chance, with our team out of town in Houston, rather than travel with them, I figured I'd come home for a couple of days and see family.
Just grab a slice, throw a bunch of slices in the carry-on.
Dude, I mentioned it. I went right to Pizza Suprema earlier, right? 138th and 8th, right to here. So,
right.
You don't mess around with that.
Boom, hurry up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the things, like, Nashville has, like, from what we know, I've never been, but from what we know, it has like a live music vibe. Everyone's there to party.
Bachelorette party.
Right? It's a lot of fun. It's a fun town. But off camera, we spoke. You were like, there's not a slice to be had in the whole place.
Yeah, the city is awesome. The vibe from the standpoint, it's like Vegas. It's replaced Vegas as like the Bachelor and Bachelorette capital of the world. Yeah,
really?
Yeah, so it's it's
all
always...
when you say that, all I hear is a bunch of people wooing, and I don't want to be a part of it.
Look, we're stand-up comics, so when there's a bachelor party at a comedy club,
that's essentially a bedbug infestation for comedy.
It is the worst night of comedy that you're gonna experience.
I see when a comedian walks in, they'll be like, "It's a bachelorette party." I'm like, "Oh, nobody wants to perform that night."
Well, I'll tell you what. Now obviously we fly charter flights with our teams, but when we used to fly commercial at a BNA on a Friday, the airport, you had all these chicks with themed jerseys or shirts.
Oh, yeah?
Like a sash for the Bachelorette. Like all like wide-eyed and fuzzy-tailed.
Yeah.
Come back on a Sunday, BNA, it's like beat up.
Yeah.
It stinks like still alcohol. It's like a scene from Hangover.
There's someone holding onto a chair.
Holy cow! Yeah.
Trying to,
People look like it's like lost time.
It becomes Port Authority all of a sudden.
It's like Penn Station getting off there.
Yeah.
But like for like a whole weekend.
Yeah. Walking Dead if you've never been to Port Authority or Penn Station at night. I guess my first question about being a GM is, I read in an article that when you were young, you've always dreamed of being a GM. Why set your bar so low? And why didn't you want to be the guy who kicks the penalty that wins the World Cup? You were like, I want to be the guy holding a clipboard going, I'm glad I signed him. What happened? Look, what did you see? What movie did you see that made you want to do this?
So I think everyone wants to play. Everyone wants to, be the pitcher or catcher for the Yankees or point guard for the Knicks if you're growing up in New York. And
right.
I think every young kid who plays sports wants to be a professional athlete. And, my father coached junior high school basketball at IS1A3, Paul Robeson. I grew up around a lot of different sports. I feel like every morning waking up, I'd come down the steps and, my father would have the Daily News, the New York Post, the Times, the Journal News. And we were always just thumbing through the box scores, looking through to see, not just who scored, but also how they scored. Not just who won, but how they won. And I think just even going through playing, I think if you ask my coaches, I was probably that guy who was really annoying on your team from the standpoint who's always asking questions like, but why? But why? So for me, I think I always wanted to play at the highest level I could. I grew up, in the shadows of Giant Stadium during the NASL with the Cosmos heyday in the 70s. But, growing up through high school and college, professional soccer wasn't really an opportunity here in the United States. But, I always thought whether it was coaching, whether it was going into management, I was always just so fascinated with not only competing, but understanding like how teams win, understanding what players kind of make teams a success. And I think I was just super motivated with that.
Okay. And when it comes to, we've spoken to a couple journalists about just the ins and outs of how a MLS team is constructed. And this is probably a massive question that can't really be answered. We don't have enough time to answer it, but
I feel like Mike Jacob will answer it if you ask it, though.
But I'm curious about just in the last even few years, the changes that MLS has implemented in how to build the roster, whether it's GAM, TAM, and all this other stuff.
Thank you, ma'am.
As a fan, it can be confusing because we don't know what's the real money, what's the fake money, what is it Bitcoin that's being transferred between clubs. As a GM, do you have to is there a manual that you study to make sure that you get everything right, and then you can speak to other GMs in your coded language that only you two understand, or is it simpler than we all think?
Well, it's one of the only leagues in the world for soccer that has a salary cap.
Right.
So when you think about other leagues in our country, you think about NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL, where it's super common in sports in our country. For our sport, it's very unique. And, there is a competitions guideline. When I first got into working in Major League Soccer, I was the assistant technical director. So I was like Peter Vermees' assistant in Kansas City. I would go to his house every couple days with the competitions guideline, and he would ask me kind of just to memorize, cover to cover, the things that were in there. And he also would say jokingly, though, make sure you understand it really well, because in 6 months' time, they're going to change half of it.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think the fact that it has a salary cap, and the fact that the mechanisms are so unique, it's probably as challenging a league in the world as there is to build a team.
Okay.
Now, have you ever seen Peter Vermees smile?
I have to tell you, he is one of the funniest guys and most fun guys to be around.
I refuse to believe that.
He is just very serious about his craft, very serious about his job. There's not a more competitive dude that you'll see when he was playing and now coaching. You obviously can tell on the sideline when you see him, but he's dialed in, and he's a pretty serious dude on the field. He has a lot of fun away from soccer.
Oh, man, we got to hang out with Peter Vermees.
What did you think? I'm curious, because I was thinking about Peter Vermees, the legendary meme. He became that meme of him saying
the camera caught him.
The camera caught him being like, F off. You remember that?
Not only do I remember that, I actually send it to him once a month.
You're like, if there was a camera in the conference room, I would be a meme.
I know what game that was. I know what action it was.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. So,
what's such a great moment, and you because we can't hear him and we just see him.
It's better.
It's so much better.
So much better.
It's just there's it's like a silent film. It's beautiful.
To go on the question Christian asked, the idea of you had the unenviable task of creating a team from scratch. What do you do first? Do you start thinking about, all right, who's the player that's going to be a pillar in our community that bonds the community with the team? Do you start thinking about designated players first? Do you start thinking about TAM players first? What's the first chip that falls?
It's interesting because there's so many different ways you can do it. And you look around our league, we've had so many different expansion teams that have built, obviously in a variety of different ways. And, for
Did you
us,
study FC Cincinnati and go, let's not do that?
Look, you know what I mean? For us, I tried to not only look at the teams that had a lot of success, teams that had won early, teams that pursued championships, but also try to look at teams maybe that didn't do so well. And the reality is, not just in our sport, in all sports in our country that have expansion teams, they usually do really poorly initially.
Yeah.
Like really bad.
Yeah.
The teams usually don't score a lot. They tend to concede a lot. Again, it's hard to put a roster together, so usually it takes you a couple years to kind of figure out what you're doing.
Right.
So, for us, I think it was important to make sure that we identified, for our ownership, looking at that first, what things were important to them. The idea of building not only a competitive team, but one that would be sustainable, one that would not just be like a one-hit wonder, but one that can have continued success is really important. And, knowing that, we try to think, looking at maybe the best practices among teams that were existing teams, maybe some other expansion teams, not just in our sport, maybe in other sports. I think, most leaders in our sport all over the world, they say, well, I want to play like Barcelona, or I want to play like Bayern Munich. Where I could appreciate that from a sporting standpoint, we also spend a lot of time looking at other teams and other leagues with salary caps. So to me, I try to think sustained success. What does the Patriots do so well? What is it the Tampa Bay Rays do that they can compete with the Yanks and Red Sox with a much smaller budget? How do teams like Sporting Kansas City, Portland Timbers, the Seattle Sounders, year after year, how are they competitive? And for us, we try to create our own best practices from there. And, we had a good idea about what things we thought would be important to kind of like the ethos or the core tenets to build a team around.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, especially you guys got off to a good start because even as an expansion team, we're pretty solid. We're
Defensively, very strong.
Yeah, we're NYCFC fans, and I remember the first time NYCFC played Nashville, and I'm like, this is an expansion. Why are they defending so well? I mean, there is a confidence, and maybe that you can talk about that a little bit. Maybe it comes from like a Walker Zimmerman, who is now a designated player, but the confidence when it comes from Nashville, at least defensively, it seems like that was a real tenet to building the team.
Well, like I mentioned earlier, the fact that expansion teams tend to concede so many goals. You look at the recent expansion teams and you see the goals conceded per season. Most of the worst teams defensively in league history were first-year teams. Right. That all got better over time. But for us, I think having a manager that we thought would be sophisticated tactically, would understand how to be able to impede other teams from scoring while also create chances themselves. The idea of, we looked at several managers in our league, abroad, lower leagues, college. We try to really look at a full base, try to get an idea of what we thought we needed. And, the longer we started looking into the idea of what we thought was important for our club, initially I kind of thought it had to be someone who was American, who understood the American player in the American league. As we went along farther and farther, we thought it was less somebody who had to be like born in the United States, but more just simply someone who understood our league and player. And the fact that we had Gary Smith already in the door with the USL team in Nashville, the fact that he won MLS Cup in 2010, quickly became kind of a no-brainer that he was the obvious choice.
Okay.
And when you're thinking about setting up a team, was it a decision to make the team structurally so defensive? Was that on purpose? And how do you think, because it seems to me like if you're going to start a club in a city that's never had a professional soccer team at this level, you'd want to play more progressive, right? You'd want to be a bit more like how Atlanta was in the beginning. So all of a sudden, everyone's scoring, everyone's running like crazy, and that's what draws in a bunch of new fans that maybe have not been fans of the sport before. Was it a conscious decision to say we're going to be defensive?
Well, I hear all the time about, you want to have a team that's going to score a lot of goals. Then I hear you also want to have a team with famous players who are world-renowned that everyone wants to come see.
Right.
For us, in general, we thought that the best way to entertain our fans, to have fans come, was just to win all the time. So we kind of thought then, all right, like, what is the best way to win?
What a simple technique.
God forbid, right?
I like how you don't overcomplicate it. He's like, how about we get 3 points on the table every time?
And look, you said get 3 points. We also, we use this analogy a lot of being like card counters at a casino. We have an idea, like, what kind of number of points you have to advance in the postseason. So, we had teased a lot about the number of draws we had last year, but, we had enough draws that we ended up, advancing in the playoffs. Being a top 4 team, getting to host a playoff game, winning 2 playoff games, so whatever we did or permutation we used, it obviously worked.
It worked.
Yeah, there's a proof of concept now. And, I think for us, once we had our manager selected, we carefully looked like positional profiles, what he might look for in certain areas of the field, certain positions, things he might look for technically, tactically, physically, psychologically, and try to build out a team that we thought fit the vision of what he would need to be successful to help him do his job, but also what we thought would have all these other things, these other core tenets, things are important to us. And, I think teams that do well defensively have a strong spine. To build a club, one of our first acquisitions was Anibal Godoy, played in the last World Cup for Panama, has played over 100 times for his country. Initially, some people scoffed at the idea of bringing him in so early. It's one of our first signings, how much money we spent to acquire him. We just believed in the things he represented as a player, as a person. We just knew he'd be a good fit. And, to initially pair him with Dax McCarty, where they hadn't played together previously, they actually played against each other, ironically, in Nashville. In the Gold Cup when the U.S. played Panama.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah, but we just kind of felt like their games just kind of would fit together. And look at the things that those two guys provided. They really just like puzzle pieces fit really well. And, to have 2 players like that in midfield, to then be able to add the likes of Walker Zimmerman, obviously, who's, written a story about himself now. And you see what he's done in the last couple of years, both for our club and for the national team, create this foundation for us to build forward from there.
Yeah, I mean, look, and then all players like CJ, CJ Sapong, who we've had on the show. This, interestingly enough, we actually broke the news that CJ was signing with Nashville. I don't know if you are aware of this, but a little birdie somebody told us, and they're like, hey, drop, this news is going to be coming out soon. And because we're clearly not journalists and we're our comedians, they saw our account and saying CJ Sapong will be signing with Nashville SC, people lost their mind. They couldn't believe.
No one took it seriously at first.
and part of me didn't take it seriously either, because part of me was like, what if some deals can fall apart
all the
last
time.
second? We're going to look like absolute idiots. But no, it's an honor that we got to be a part of the Nashville story a little bit.
CJ's killed it. We saw he did last year. In our second season, he helped take us a step further as a club. Not only the amount of goals he scored, he had 12 goals last year, but the synergy he had with Hani Mukhtar, with those two guys combined to do up front, and when you add in the likes of Randall Leal, Ake Loba. You saw Ethan Zubak, Hanwala Bawana, Luke Hackinson the other night against Atlanta in Open Cup. Teal Bunbury's recovering from an injury. We like the fact that we've got a range of guys, different ages, different skill sets. Some guys are more target players, some guys play in the back shoulder, center backs. But we think we've got a lot of different tools and a lot of ways we can attack teams.
It's a dangerous team. I mean, it
really is. A lot of pieces.
It's as a fan of opposing teams, I think when I watch Nashville, I'm like, they can defend so well, but why are their defenders a huge threat to score as well? I mean, there is, I think maybe that's what leads to Walker Zimmerman getting the contract that he gets, because it's not simply that he's going to defend very well. We all know that he can do that, but he can get you, 7-8 goals a season.
Dangerous in set pieces.
And most center backs in the league are not able to do that.
Look, we have a very diverse group offensively, and I think as much is made about how well we defend. Look, we had record-setting performances over the last 2 years defensively, and no one's had more shutouts than we've had over the last 2 seasons. I think when you see what we're doing defensively, I think it kind of overshadows sometimes how good we've been offensively over the last year also. Last year we were among the league's leaders in scoring, second highest goals per game at home. This year we had to play our first 8 games in a road. It was some odyssey to get to open, Geodis Park. We had to play our first 8 away, and where we averaged a goal per game offensively in those first 8 games, we now have 6 goals in our 3 home games. So we're averaging 2 goals a game at home again. So all of a sudden now, this stingy defensive team is banging in goals for fun.
Okay.
When I was young, they used to say, when you were watching a baseball game, mostly Yankees. My grandfather used to listen to Yankee games because he's from Cuba, and that's how you
listen to Phil Rizzuto on the radio.
Yeah. So he would listen to Spanish, but he would only I'd be watching and he'd be standing next to I'm like, the picture's right here. But one of the things that always used to confuse me was the announcer would say, if you're keeping score at home. You seem like the guy who was. You had the index card and you're keeping score. Were you? Have you ever done that?
Yeah, when I went Yankee Stadium or Shea, I always got a scorebook, a scorecard. I was always keeping track.
Right.
I knew it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, 6-4 3-double play. I knew not only the out, how it was constructed, and we kept track of that kind of stuff all the time.
Dude, I used to see the guys do that at Yankee Stadium. I'm like, why are they doing homework, man? These guys are too old to be in.
They were always old dudes, I was the geeky kid next to the old dude who was.
And they had the one ear radio because they were listening to it as well. It's wild.
So would that carry over to your general management style when it comes to building a roster or looking at the results of your roster? Are you looking at those goals per game,
sabermetric kind of thing,
XG, Moneyball? How much of a factor is that when you look at your
play
squad?
Football Manager?
Absolutely a Moneyball theorist, and I think because of a book or a movie, I think sometimes gets glamorized and maybe something it might not necessarily be. And the reality is, I think if you understand the principles that go along with it, I think at the core you're trying to acquire the undervalued, and you use data to be able to determine what the value is. And we've done I think a successful job as a staff identifying players maybe on other rosters that we thought in our team in this setting, whether it's the system we play, the manager we have, the players we put around them, that they'd have a lot of success. And you see guys like Dave Romney, who was LA Galaxy, Alex Wheel, who was at New York Red Bulls. Ethan Zubak scored the other day. He was a reserve for LA Galaxy. Each of these guys. Maybe
huge goal.
Maybe we were able to identify some things about them using some data sources. The idea of analytics is not just about numbers. It's information. So for us, I think we've got a really diverse staff from the standpoint that look at the game a lot differently with different lenses. is, and because of that, I think we're able to make like really like informed decisions.
Okay.
When you see Toronto FC, and I believe their general manager came out and said, well, I went on transfermarket.com and I clicked on players whose contracts are running out, and I saw Insigne, so he emailed his agent. When you see that, and then everything you just said, you've got charts and red string. Yeah, you got red string on everything. Do you think to yourself sometimes like, hey, I guess it could be, you could skin a cat both ways?
Look, every team's different, So to me, rather than spend time talking about what other teams do or don't do, focus on like what we do,
Yeah.
I just think, our league is complicated.
Right.
I find it interesting sometimes that you have some ownership groups, especially with new teams, that they'll get with a search firm and say, we got to bring somebody in from overseas. I got to bring someone who doesn't understand our league. And again, every team is different. Every club's mission is different. But, knowing how long it takes to understand how vast our country is. You see players who come in from Europe well past their prime, and they're like, wait a second, wait, you play in what temperature in August?
Yeah. And we have to fly 6 hours?
Yeah, I mean, look, in 2020, when we resumed play after COVID, we landed in Dallas on the tarmac. We get off the tarmac, it's 102 degrees. Kicked off, it was 100 degrees.
Wow.
Hani Mukhtar, who was German, and had come from Denmark.
Right.
He says to me, we're standing on tarmac. He said, other than a sauna, figured out playing. He said he's never actually even experienced temperatures like that before.
He's like, why are we being tortured? Yeah.
So I just think sometimes when it comes to players coming from different countries, I get how fans expect immediate results. And then when you spend certain amounts of money, when you have players who've had certain pedigrees or CVs in other leagues, there's always be certain expectations. But you have to be realistic also that, every country is different, every league is different.
Yeah.
And, for players coming from abroad, this is as unique a country and league as there is anywhere in the world.
What is the one thing that you would say to an aspiring, a young lad out there who wants to be a GM when he grows up, just like you did? What's if you are you're starting an MLS club from scratch, what's the one, I don't know, is it a golden bullet? Like, what's the smart move? Is it to get a couple of TAM guys? Like, what's the smart, is it get a big DP player? What is the one thing you would say, like, if you do this, you can then build around it? And I don't want to hear, like, the inspiration, none of that. What's, like, the money move? You know what I mean?
Well, look, I think it's easy to say we're going to spend a lot of money on somebody who's going to score a ton of goals.
Right.
But the reality is, the simplest terms, if you score, you should win.
Right.
If you don't concede, you'll never lose.
Right.
Right. So literally. I'm not a mathematician, but that's kind of how it works. So to me, I think for us, we were fortunate in how we built things out with having a really strong spine down the middle. We kind of felt if we could make sure we'd be hard to score against, we could then create, manufacture, and develop an attacking impetus. And I think that year one we were able to do that, and because of that, I think year two and year three we've been really more dynamic offensively.
And I want to talk a little bit about the stadium. Obviously, the home opener was it Philadelphia Union. It ended up 1-1. But getting to experience that feeling like for you to open a stadium, it's one of those stadiums where there's been a couple that we've gone to opening days.
Seems like everyone's getting a stadium except ours.
But it's one where this seems to be a match day that people got to go to. So, but what was it like getting to open that stadium?
We were saying off air, I was saying, I was saying half joking, half serious. I laughed with friends about the fact that I just can't believe I get to do this for a living. Growing up, talking about watching all these things, and now getting a chance to have a role as a general manager in a professional soccer franchise in our country. In my wildest dreams, one, to think that you can do that here in the United States, but two, to be somewhere where the team is that important. My daughter, who lives in the Upper East Side, she visited last summer with her boyfriend, and I took him downtown to kind of show them around, and we were stopped at a red light, and there were two fans wearing a gold jerseys, one wearing a Zimmerman jersey, one wearing a Mukhtar jersey. Yeah. And he turns to me and he's like, Mr. Jacobs, you guys are like the Knicks here, the Yankees here.
Yeah.
And I was saying, that to me is just surreal to think in our market we could be so important. And growing up going to basketball games at the Garden, I was at the elimination game, unfortunately, against the Atlanta Hawks. Trae Young is balding. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
I hope you were booing him.
By the way, he ain't allowed in Nashville either, Trey.
Yeah. Don't come in Nashville.
Yeah. But Mike on side talk.
Yeah. Bing bong. Mike Jacobs.
But to know what the vibe is like, how loud it is in the Garden. I'm telling you, it's not even like a hypothetical. Like for sure, Geodis Park, it is the loudest venue in Major League Soccer.
Really?
To me, it's one thing to say that. It's one thing to aspire for that. To have a building that'll be miserable for visiting teams to play in is awesome. I love the feeling that to me it is like the Garden from the standpoint that it is just so loud and vibrant. You ask our players what it was like. I mean, I want to get there early that day, the very first game, because I wanted to kind of be able to take it all in before people got there. I was there at like 10:15 in the morning. We kicked up at 3. I just wanted to be there.
You're mowing the lawn. Grass.
I want to be down in the field. I want to be in the locker room. I kind of wanted to see everything. I don't like being around too much when the players are around. I think some people try to insert themselves. I always say it's like a game's almost like a Broadway show. It's like a production. And I think when the lights go on, a lot of people kind of want to be in the middle of it all, and have to be about them. Like for sure, I for sure know where I stand from the standpoint that I'm very peripheral. To me, the game is about the 11 guys in the field and your manager. So even on match day, if players are around, I wanted to be down there the first day in the locker room, kind of just to see their reactions, to wish them good luck. I try to get out of there real fast. I just don't like being around. They need to do their thing. They need to do that, focus on the match. They don't need anyone else there around and do that. But to hear how loud the stadium was, and the fans, they call it the castle, and I think for this vibrant fan base to now have a home, there are cool things about the stadium. To me, the coolest thing is now we've got a home for our fans.
Okay.
Well, what do you do game day? Are you in a suite? Do you watch the match, or you messing with the shrimp cocktail, or are you pacing the
concourse?
The concourse, or are you pitch side? Do you like to walk around? How do you take in a game? How does Mike Jacobs take in a Nashville SC home match?
So I get there really early, and it's less because I've got a lot of responsibilities at the match. I think it's more that I'm just nervous energy. I think I would drive my girlfriend nuts if I was around for 5 hours before the game,
right?
Hanging around her, So usually I'm kind of by myself up in the box that I sit in. I'm also a serial Red Bull drinker, so I probably have about 10 Red Bulls on game day also.
Okay, well,
and I'm already wound up.
Let's stop that as soon as possible.
I gotta be honest. I'm pretty worried about you now that you said this. I feel like you should mess with the shrimp cocktail.
Okay, just get a nice bottle of wine.
Yeah. But he made it.
And I'm already wound up enough, and I talk real fast, so I don't need the extra caffeine. But.
How do them Nashville boys handle your New York energy? Because you are the more comfortable you've gotten here, the faster you've talked, and the more your accents come out. How do they handle? Because we're seen as aggressive everywhere else in this country, where we're like, what are you talking about? We're relaxed. How do these these Southern boys handle you?
I was telling a buddy today that when you think, I listen to sports talk radio, which it's awesome to be home and listen to that, because everyone's just miserable fans, yelling at the announcers on the radio. But I think it's not just about winning in New York. I think for sure every fan base, every city probably wants their team to win. But New Yorkers don't expect their teams to win, but expect them to win a certain way. Expect them to play you think teamwork. I feel like I was born and raised on these Knicks teams with Clyde Frazier and Willis Reed and Dave DeBusschere. So it's not only winning, but how they share the ball, how they move the ball around, playing together as a group, and then I think it's how tough they are. You think about whether it's Willis Reed taking on the whole Lakers team in a fight, to Pat Riley's teams in the mid '90s. You're supposed to kind of to fight and compete. And I think for us, whether it's having New Yorkers like Alex Wheel or Taylor Washington, whether it's having people I think embody those same qualities, like Dax McCarty or Annabelle Godoy, like a Walker Zimmerman or a Sean Davis or a CJ Sapong. These guys, they roll their sleeves up. They play with a chip on their shoulder, and I think maybe I talk a little faster or get a little more wound up than those guys do. But I also kind of feel like most of them carry the same qualities that I want to have in a player or team.
Right. Dax is scrappy, bro. He drank a lot of water when he was out here. He's scrappy. I know he's not from New York, but he damn near plays like it.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, we were talking about the stadium, but the tweet from People about Reese Witherspoon, obviously one of the owners of Nashville SC, but the tweet that they put was, congratulating the Tennessee Titans soccer team, Reese Witherspoon at the Tennessee Titans. What was that internally when people saw that tweet? Because this is what we deal with in American soccer.
Like 30 empty Red Bull cans off the table.
because this is how you know you've made it in American soccer when media completely either disregards, disrespects, or just does not acknowledge what this team is about.
Look, it was People Magazine, right? So
Right.
it's a bit of a rag, So I mean, like, I don't know that like I'm going there for my source of sports news,
Right.
But look, Ian Ayres, our CEO, and he's also one of my closest friends, and he ran Liverpool for 10 years, and he talks about what the media was like in England, the scrutiny that they were under on a daily basis, and to me, again, growing up like with the New York sports media. If people are talking about our team, whether it's critically, whether it's positively, I feel so humbled the fact that like we're that important. People are talking about us, and I think it's our responsibility to give them something positive to talk about. Right. I don't like hearing if someone doesn't like a player on our team, or if our team doesn't win. But I'm also down with the fact that like it's our responsibility to give them something to talk about. So if they want to talk about the Tennessee Titans soccer team, I mean, I think that's ridiculous. I'm not buying a People magazine anytime soon. But I think our fans and fans of soccer in our country, they know what Nashville SC is all about.
Can I make a suggestion?
Go for it.
Make a fake Tennessee Titans soccer team kit.
Okay.
Right? Maybe you guys can play around with the Tennessee Titans a little bit. It's good content.
Yeah, because the Titans did retweet it, and I forgot what they retweeted, but people eventually deleted the tweet. Just own it, right? Own up to the mistake. It's a lot more fun.
Look, Derrick Henry is also a minority owner with our club. Yeah. He is the largest human I've ever seen in my life. During the expansion draft, he presented one of our picks. When he went on the stage, it was like an eclipse. It was like all light just like evaporated. He's a large dude, so I mean, anything Tennessee Titans, if he's in that group, I'm down with that.
Totally.
So, you might remember Tiki Barber.
Yeah.
Yeah. Were you a Giants fan or Jets?
I was kind of like agnostic. I didn't have
agnostic. You didn't pick one.
Yeah.
First time I met him, he's a little bit shorter than me. I was like, "Oh, you ain't that big, dude. I guess I could be a running back." And I pat him on the back, and my hand was swollen for 3 days. It's this brick wall is this man's body. I'm like, I can't. I was like, I can't believe you're running into these monstrous human beings, at fast speeds. And then I was like, oh, they should be worried about you. You're a bowling ball.
100%.
It's insane.
All right.
I'm not built that way. I'm very cushy, very soft.
Mike, we have a couple questions from fans. This is our Gully Squad is our supporters group. Okay, so we have one here from Dennis Higgins.
I love this because you kind of brought this up.
Yeah. So he asked the question: which one of your players best embodies the spirit of Nash Vegas? Which is I've heard this before. Initially, I thought it was like a TV show, but no,
it does sound like a TV show that's only on USA Network, right?
So I guess it was embodying like the idea of Nash Vegas.
Yeah.
Nash Vegas to me is like Broadway, rooftop bars, bachelorette parties, pedal taverns.
Right.
I think it's like glitz and glamour. I mean,
Is Pedal Tavern those like 8 people on the bikes drinking?
I think you can't be sober to be on one of those. And I think you have to be a bachelorette.
I would tell you it's a unicorn if you found a sober person on those.
Yeah, I'm not going anyone anytime soon, but I think they're great. I think as long as people go on them, it's awesome.
They definitely don't have those in New York. That would be
you get beat
horrific.
Up.
Yeah.
You went on one of those in the Bronx.
In the Bronx?
Yeah.
That would be chopped up to 8 different bikes.
Did you mention who? A player?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think when you think of like glitz and glamour in our team, it's got to be Hani Mukhtar. I think, you see whether it's the way he styles his hair, whether it's the way he salutes the fans. I think everything about him emanates. I think like the celebrity, the glitz and glamour about Nash Vegas.
They used to say like wide receivers, you want one who wants the spotlight.
A diva.
You want one who's like, no, give me the ball. Who enjoys that. When I see Hani Mukhtar, I'm like, this kid loves when the lights are on him, man. Oh, when he scores, he's like, bathe me with your applause.
He does the salute, right?
He salutes the fans.
He salutes the fans. Yeah, there's a he's clearly like embraced that, like. There's clearly, we have captains on every team, but there's,
the guy. He's the guy.
And that's just even, I when I first heard the name Hani Mukhtar, I'm like, I don't know who this guy is. But when he arrived in Major League Soccer, I mean, he's already had some of the best goals during his time here. I mean, the as far as just him adapting to this league, it seems like there's been no issue at all. What have
goals are all the same sizes, right?
I know, right?
Yeah.
Is there anything that has led to that, as far as giving him the most welcoming environment to succeed, or is this guy just special?
It's funny because when you look at people around the league, I think they tend to associate how good a DP is by like how expensive their transfer fee is,
right,
or how much their wages is. We bought Hani for 2.85 million. You know, that's a fraction of what most teams spend on designated players. So I think the initial thought is, well, Nashville's not spending money, or Nashville's not gonna dip their toe in the water when it comes to bringing big players in. You know, Hani was the player of the year in a league came over from. Most players who come from Europe come well past their prime. To have someone come here at age 24, I think is very unique. You know, Hani is a youth international for Germany, represented them at the U19, U21 levels. He's played for them in the Euros, you know, so I mean, like, you know, at the youth levels. And you know, I think year one for him, it took some time. I mentioned before, there's an adaptation period you go through. Not only is it a different league, a different climate. Remember, also, he came here during COVID. You know, he played 2 matches, and then, you know, this kid who comes here from, you know, Scandinavia, you know, his family's not with him. He's kind of on his own. You know, he's now, you know, holed up in an apartment, you know, trying to figure out what he's doing in the United States, you know, where he is. You know, so I think to go
Probably
through,
like, who's playing all these banjos?
okay, you know, I think to go through all of that and then to just absolutely kill it last year. I mean, I think people are seeing, you know, who he really is as a player. And you said it before also, I think he embraces, like, when the bright lights come on. I think, you know, he's one of those kids that I think, you know, the bigger the game, the better he is.
Yeah, he just seems like it. This is Austin W., who asked a couple of questions, but I love his first one. How do you measure the success of your signings? What is it? When do you start to feel the stress, you know, of a signing? Is it immediately? Is there something? Do you give yourself a certain amount of leeway? How do you assess your signings?
I mentioned something like Hani. You know, I mentioned about the adaptation period a player goes through sometimes. Everyone's going to benchmark success in different ways. You know, ultimately for us, we want to have players who are going to influence winning. So, you know, every position, every role is different, but we've got different, you know, maybe metrics we use to benchmark each person's performance, you know, what we're expecting from them on a game-to-game basis, you know, and then, you know, everyone's kind of different as far as how much time they might need to settle in. And, you know, I think players who come from countries that aren't English-speaking, there can be challenges. For us in year one, we went into the 2020 season saying we were going to make sure our locker room was almost exclusively only English and Spanish speaking. And that wasn't to be discriminant of any other culture as much as the fact it's about starting a team from scratch. We want to make sure our whole group could communicate with each other.
Right.
You know, and, you know, we had players who were French speaking also. You know, we had players you mentioned who were primarily Spanish speaking, but most of them were bilingual. We offered intensive English language lessons to our players who were primarily Spanish speaking. We also had intensive Spanish language lessons to our players and staff who were primarily English speaking. You know, so I think, you know, you got to be honest with the fact that what it might take players coming from a different culture, and that culture isn't just how your team plays, but the language you speak, the food you're used to eating,
Right.
you know, the climate you're used to playing in. There's a lot of factors that go into that.
Right, because I'm not playing if you don't got Doritos. You know what I mean? I'm not doing it. Get it out
I'm
there.
curious, Mike. How's your Spanish? You know, I'm sure coming from New York, then being around soccer. What's you put the players under some Spanish lessons?
Were you the teacher in the intensive Spanish speaking?
You know, un poquito. You know,
Yes.
Okay.
Senor Jacobs?
look, especially you know when you're recruiting in Spanish-speaking countries, you know, to me, I think the idea of telling a player they're important. Talked before about the idea about maybe sometimes acquiring the undervalued. If you're going to value someone, you know, how do you tell someone they're important, but then learn my language?
Yeah,
you're
right.
important, but then you got to fit in.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I think it's our job to make sure everyone feels welcome. And you know, for us, whether it's learning the language, I can tell you, I understand it way better than speak it. You know, my kids joke sometimes I'm like on a 3rd or 4th grade reading level when it comes to speaking Spanish.
Yeah.
But also, you know, I did over 500 days Duolingo, and you know, we did, you know, Vanderbilt University. You know, we did some stuff with them, with our staff. And I was involved in that also, and you know, I just think it's our responsibility to make sure that you can communicate with your players.
And it's a huge advantage, obviously, in this game, building a team, building trust with players that you have, with players that you're trying to sign. So, yeah, I encourage it as much as possible.
Huge.
All right, you got a next question, Alexis?
This is also from Austin W. Any decisions that you've learned from in the past, good or bad? And I maybe I'll change that a little bit to say, like, what's an early mistake that you may have made when you were an assistant, or that you saw that you thought to yourself, you know, I'm not going to do that when I'm a GM, and then maybe it happened, or you managed to avoid it.
We look at a lot of case studies from other teams in our league and other leagues, other teams, other sports, and then we use those case studies to try to create our own best practices. You know, so we look and try to see, based on what someone did, either don't do that or tweak that. And you know, I think initially what I was probably most surprised about, having coached in college. I mean, I coached in college for over 20 years, and you know, the idea of going abroad to recruit somebody, I'd rather waste $1,000, $2,000 on a flight in a hotel to see someone who's not good enough and not get them a scholarship than just watch a video of somebody, sign them on a scholarship, and be stuck with a bad player.
Right.
Blown away at times, and I think the league's gotten more sophisticated, but I think there sure was a time in our league where, management and coaches would take a flyer on players they saw once in video or saw a YouTube video, and, for us, I would just say, we're just not going to sign anybody unless we've seen them personally. In most cases, actually in all cases, until we've spoken to them personally. Within our league, you can't talk to players in an interleague trade until after a trade's done. But in most cases also, I would say the players in our league, especially the American domestic players, and the experience I had coaching in college or in youth, our staff, my assistant general manager, Ali Mackay, was a former agent. Our director of player personnel, Chance Myers, a former player in the league. Between those guys, myself, a manager who coached MLS, I think probably, like I said once, I think it was 88% like domestic players. We either had coached against, recruited, watched as a youth player in high school, in college, as well as in MLS. So I think we just knew so much about them. Yeah. There was less wiggle room, less margin of error.
Okay, I'm curious. You mentioned the highlight videos on YouTube. What's you don't have to say maybe what's the worst one, but we've heard some terrible music on these videos. I can imagine as a GM, you have heard the worst techno music over these soccer videos. Anyone's that, is there anything you want to say maybe to people that want to send the video as far as like what should be included and, better music at the very least?
Well, I say if you send it to me, like I'm not from Jersey or from the shore, you don't have to have like fist pumping type music. Yeah, like I'm really cool having none rather than having.
Yeah,
right. I just think that the idea of getting a highlight tape. Those are all the things players do well. A lot of times we watch stuff, we want to see them make mistakes and see how they respond to them. When it comes to things like maybe like defending in transition, or you've given the ball away, or someone's given away near you. Like, what's your first reaction? Is it to put your head down? Is it to is it to strut? Or is it to work back to get the ball back, or work back behind the ball? And sometimes you can't see those things. Let's just see them screw up first.
Nice.
Okay.
Also, pick different music. Throw Adele in there, dude. Switch it up a little.
Do not send me any videos with Adele.
Okay, don't switch it up, dude. Why are you listening to me? Actually, I do think of myself as a hidden genius, okay? I got an idea, okay? I don't know if this will work. Maybe it will. I've had some other genius ideas, maybe get a FIFA video game where the player can only play as their own position, right? And that's all they do.
I told them it was ridiculous, so please, you can tell.
I think it's genius.
Look, what I would say as a hidden genius, I would keep that stuff hidden.
Keep it hidden. Keep it hidden. I think it's too good.
There's some special ideas you should just keep to yourself.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I have a question here. This will be our last one, and this is a bit of a roast of a question as well. But this is from Kyle Ritchie. He's a Philadelphia Union fan. Obviously, Nashville lost in the playoffs to the Philadelphia Union. So he asked this question. Feel free to answer it or do not answer it. Answer however you like. But he said, "How much money did they spend in the offseason for a penalty kick coach?" So it's a little bit of a jab, but that was a tough. Obviously, a tough way to go out. Losing in penalties is frustrating. But what do you remember about that game?
Frustrating for everyone at this.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, look, Philly's a really good side, and I'm a big fan of Jimmy Curtin, Ernst Tanner. I really like their group a lot. I think how they put their team together and how their team plays. Philly's a hard place to play in general. Their fans throw snowballs at Santa Claus.
Right.
There's a jail in their football stadium.
Yeah, look, I like going places where people boo us or hate us. I love the idea of being the bad guy. So every time we come in, if you want to boo them, boo me. I think it's great.
Right.
Look, to have to play against Andre Blake is hard enough. To have to do it in pens is even more challenging. To me, best goalkeeper in the league. I have a lot of respect for him and what he's done in our league also, and as well as what he's done abroad. Having to stop penalties for Hani Mukhtar, then Annabelle Godoy. I think if just about anybody else was picking people to shoot for our team, you'd pick both those guys.
Yeah.
So I think clearly they were guys who should have been selected, and credit to Blake for making saves. I think it's there's a lot of stress that goes along with taking penalties. And I was a goalkeeper. My mother, she used to hate watching penalties because she said about the pressure on the goalkeeper. I used to love it because there's no pressure on the goalkeeper.
Okay.
I've got 100%. You're supposed to score. It's 12 yards out. You're the goalkeeper. It's like a free throw. So to me, there's no pressure on a goalkeeper. So,
which I've said before, and someone called me crazy. So I'm glad you said that. I'm like,
100%,
it's there. They're the ones who are trying to score.
They're supposed to score.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, for Blake to score 2, for us to have 2 guys miss the target, I think it looks way easier than it is. I think to get up there in front of a rowdy crowd behind, really the best goalkeeper in our league, in a game where it's a cup game where you have to hit those to win, I think it looks easier than it is. And I think, what was his name, Kyle?
Kyle, yeah.
Yeah, Reynal Leal did okay 2 weeks ago when we had to take a penalty.
Right.
Yeah. So I think we're good, yeah. So.
Well said.
I do want to ask one more question, and it's a yes or no, but heat maps, they're bullshit, right?
I mean, they're an actual thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it all depends, again, maybe how you benchmark your players. Our director of strategy analytics is Oliver Miller-Farrell, and he talks a lot sometimes about like what data people use, how, I think everyone's gonna look at different things. The idea like time of possession. Some people look at that as like it's an important stat. Some people say it's completely worthless.
Right.
I mean, I actually find our team does better when we have less of the ball than we have a lot of it.
Right.
Heat maps. I mean, I think it shows you how much a player runs around. I mean, it's also possible players could be just running around like a chicken with a head.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so
Every once in a while, they'll be like, hey, look at, I'm an Arsenal supporter. They'll be like, look at Bukayo Saka's heat map. I'm like, this didn't tell me anything.
Well, look, I'll tell you, we've got like Sean Davis, who, I mean, if he had a paintbrush tacked to his waistband, he'd paint the whole field.
Right.
So he's just everywhere. So I think it's case by case. And I think for some players, it's probably really relevant. I think for other players, it might be one of those hidden type ideas. Kind of keep it on the side.
Keep it hidden.
Yeah.
I got a bunch.
Well, I think after having a long conversation with you, what we've learned is that if Alexis and I were GMs of a team, we'd run it based less on data and more on just vibes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Also, they would probably present relegation to get our club out. Just because we would be horrific.
But Mike, this has been an absolute honor. Thank you for taking the time and answering some of our either intelligent and ridiculous questions.
Right. Speak for yourself. Mine were all very intelligent.
The hidden genius delivered today. But no, this has been super, super cool. It's like we actually, it helped us learning about, and I think a lot of the audience as well, about what it really takes to like just run a team. And I'm sort of realizing that there's more complexity in it, I think, than probably some other leagues. I think you hear how teams are built in other leagues, and there's a lot of like passion for the club, and which all those things are relevant, but it seems to be that's how they sell it. You know what I mean? Like they focus on just the emotion around it when there's really a lot of work being done behind the scenes to build a strong team.
Yeah, look, I remember reading a quote from Ozzie Newsome, who was the general manager at the time with the Baltimore Ravens, and talked about the fact that he thought his job was to keep his team in the playoffs every year. It's like a tournament, and once you get in a tournament, in our sport, 7 teams get in each conference. You get a 1 in 7 chance to go in the dance to the MLS Cup. Yeah. So for me, if we keep building a team that allows our coach the opportunity to get to the playoffs, be above the line, then we're doing our job.
Right.
Is there anything you want to let people know? Is there anything you want? You could drop your social. You could drop the ticket link for season tickets. Anything you want to say? Is there anything you want to let the fans know?
Geodis Park's been selling out like crazy. They don't need any help from me to promote it. I think, social, I try to stay off of that as much as possible. I am reading articles and stuff like that, but I try not to get too much involved in, tweeting back and forth with people. Less about Knickerbockers, and I'm all in with that.
Yeah, dude. I gotta start hitting you up with the Knicks, bro. I'm a massive Knicks fan.
Look, it's I think the idea I mentioned earlier. I think the chance to be doing something like this, in some ways it's surreal to get a chance to help build a team, run a team, to assist a coach in putting a group together to be a professional sports franchise and in an MLS. It's a dream come true.
Awesome.
Well done. Yeah.
We got to go down to Nashville, hang out in the GM box.
Let's go, man.
Maybe just start dropping some of these hidden genius gems,
No, it's beautiful to see, especially, being New Yorkers and seeing somebody from New York. New York doesn't get to necessarily represent the American soccer community. It's New Jersey usually, right?
Yeah.
But so it's awesome to see. So, but Mike, thank you so much for joining us, man. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for watching. That was hilarious, wasn't it? By the way, you're welcome. Hey, we got a lot more of that. All you have to do is hit the subscribe button, hit that stupid little bell because it tells you exactly when we put up videos and stuff like that. And if you got time and you got a little money burning a hole in your pocket, why don't you subscribe to our Patreon? We got a lot more funny stuff and we get real wild in there.